I'm Genevieve Riutort with the Westside Food Bank, and I want to welcome you to the Cornerstone Theater's Creative Seeds discussion series. I have with me here tonight a panel of distinguished experts on the topic of hunger and volunteerism, and I will start with Robert Egger, who is the founder of LA Kitchen. We also have with us Vesna Fartek from Project Angel Food and Luke Ippoliti from MEND. I'm going to ask each one of you, if you don't mind, to please start with just a brief introduction of your organization, its mission, and how you use volunteers. Robert, why don't we start with you?
Great. The LA Kitchen is an offshoot of the DC Central Kitchen, which I founded in 1988, which takes food that would have been thrown away, like I think many of our programs, you know, the idea of food waste, offering men and women a chance to gain skills while they learn a new craft, in our case, culinary skills, but very, very important since the very beginning, volunteerism. This idea of anybody can come in and participate and work side by side with the students. In fact, students actually guide volunteers as part of their learning experience. But the goal is together we'll produce thousands of beautiful meals every day with food that would have been wasted.
Fantastic, thank you. Vesna, will you please describe Project Angel Food?
Of course. Project Angel Food's mission is to feed those people that are seriously ill to the point where they can't cook for themselves, they can't go grocery shopping. A lot of them are homebound or bedbound, with a meal that is not only free to them, but also medically tailored toward them. So we have a kitchen that works 6 days a week to prepare about 1,100 meals a day, that once they're prepared, then they get delivered to the person's home, so they don't have to worry about having at least that one full meal a day. In addition to that, we provide them breakfast if either their doctor requires it for them or they ask for it, and some extra fruit to give them just some extra nutrition, because a lot of our clients actually need to get more calories to get better.
Sure.
And the volunteers work in our kitchen all the days that we're open, help in the office, fundraisers, all types of different things. About 3,100 of them came in this year. Did about 18 full-time people's worth of work, so we could not make it without them.
That's amazing. Luke?
Yes, the organization that I work for, as you said, is called MEND, which stands for Meet Each Need with Dignity. And MEND is a holistic poverty relief organization located in Pacoima that serves the Northeast San Fernando Valley, provides food, clothing, medical, dental, gardening, education and training, job training services to over 30,000 low-income individuals every single month. And the mission is powered by volunteers to provide basic needs and create pathways to self-reliance. And MEND, since its creation over 40 years ago, in a garage in Northridge, has always been driven by volunteers. The founders always remained volunteers. The core group that founded it continued to keep that sort of volunteer spirit alive throughout, you know, the 40 years of the organization's history. So MEND is really an organization that believes in putting volunteers kind of front and center and doing the direct service, being the ones that are serving the meals, providing the medical care, providing the dental care, teaching the ESL classes. So it's really the volunteers that are developing those relationships with community members and applying their time and energy and talents towards making a difference in their lives.
Thank you all for those overviews, and I think we all know that without the help of volunteers, none of our organizations would be able to function. I think it's safe to say that for each of our organizations, and this applies to the Westside Food Bank, I know for sure, that there are more volunteer hours worked than staff hours. And Luke, I know that you mentioned an inside-out model of volunteerism. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the idea is that volunteerism isn't an afterthought. It's not that all of the kind of core functions of the organization are being delivered by paid staff members. It's really that the volunteers are the ones that are providing the core services, and the staff support in a facilitating role in supervising, training, You know, kind of being the forces for, you know, continuity, whereas the volunteers are really the ones doing the impactful work. We have a staff of about 30, and the full-time equivalent of the volunteer hours donated last year would have equaled another over 100.
Wow, so that's
staff.
a big difference.
That's a big difference. So really, you know, the staff are
Volunteers
contributing.
are front and center.
Yeah, the staff are contributing less than a third
Mhm.
of the amount of work that it takes to you know, to provide all that service to the community.
So I know that all of our organizations want to make volunteering as accessible as possible. And I know, Vesna, you talked a lot about that, how you make volunteering kind of an easy yes for people and what you do to make it accessible for potential volunteers.
Well, first of all, we have great word of mouth, so a lot of people hear about us, and when someone comes in and says, I'd really like to start, do you have orientation set up or anything? We've kind of cut back to 2 a month, but what we'll do for people is if they need to get in there earlier, or they just want to because they only have a certain time available. We have a lot of people in the entertainment business. They're gone for 9 months
That's
out
a
of the
perk
year.
of living in Los Angeles.
I want them those other 2 months, so we'll make arrangements for them to come in at some other time. Also, we bring groups in and don't have them go through a regular orientation. They can come in for 15 minutes that morning, and they'll be in the kitchen in 20 minutes, or in the gardens or wherever they're gonna help out. The other thing that we found works really well for us is not having any kind of minimums that they have to do. Someone can come in once every couple months, someone can come in for 4 hours, they can come in every day if they want, a full day, a partial day, however they want to work it. And we found that we actually get more volunteer hours that way than telling them, you have to give us at least 10 hours a month, or whatever, you know, minimum you put into that. And then we try to also have things for different levels of age or abilities and that. Everything from, we have grade school kids come in for a special project every Tuesday from across the street, to high schoolers that come in to do their hours, to special needs groups that come in to help us out, to retirees that are in their 90s helping us out. So it's like the full spectrum of everybody. And we try to find a way for them to fit in.
That makes it really accessible. So I want to get into a little bit about the topic at hand, which is not just volunteerism, but also hunger. All of our agencies are involved in hunger relief work. And Robert, I want to get into with you what you mean by people having a deeper hunger.
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to do a little history here, because the reason I started this first, the DC Central Kitchen, now LA Kitchen, I was a volunteer who was told to mind my own business. For all intents and purposes, I went out one night on a truck that served the homeless on the streets of Washington, D.C. And here it was on a rainy night, and I was a nervous volunteer looking at big pots of lentil soup and sacks of white bread and lemon cookies and bananas, and looking and asking innocently where'd the food come from, and heard it was purchased at a very expensive grocery store. And I thought, man, I ran nightclubs. And I thought, wow, I work in an industry, and a lot of my friends work in catering, and they're throwing away mountains of food every night, you know? And then, but the more important part is we ended up pulling up right across from the State Department on Virginia Avenue, and slid open the door of this truck, and here was a line of people down the street waiting in the rain, like this, for this truck, as they did every single night. And we dutifully served, and at one point it was like my nervousness, you know, the first time volunteer, what it'll be like, that evaporated really quick, but I could not let go of this notion that I was up in the warm truck, and people outside were waiting in the rain so I could come out and serve them. And to me, that's charity, which is about the redemption of the giver, not the liberation of the receiver. And I came back with a very simple plan that said, hey, you can feed more people better food for less money if you get food that's donated from these places, but if you bring it to a central kitchen and you start a training program, you can shorten the line by the way you serve it, and in effect repay the restaurants with entry-level food. But every charity I went to told me why it wouldn't work. And I was shocked. I was just a volunteer trying to help, and I was rebuffed at every turn. So since the very beginning of my run, I think that we share this idea of volunteerism front and center, but to do what? You know, and my thing has always been liberate the receiver. Don't indenture them to our charity. so that volunteers can feel good, you know?
Right.
And so
Wouldn't
what
it
you
be great
have,
if we were all put out of business?
yeah, and I think volunteers are the key. So to a certain extent, the volunteers for us are both a mechanism, a sense of, it's great because the students can learn by teaching, which is a cool thing. You know, I think for many students, particularly people coming home from prison, or a variety of backgrounds in which they feel lesser than, suddenly being able to teach a university student or a CEO or a movie star makes people feel like, hey man, maybe I really can't do this. So it's a powerful thing. But again, we also want that thing to flip. You know, we want people to leave feeling like, you know, they did something that was more equitable for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But to your question, the underlying theme of everything is this idea that whether it's somebody on Skid Row or somebody in Brentwood, most people when they go to sleep at night or ready to knock on heaven's door, there's this sense of my life meant something, you know, I mattered.
Mm-hmm.
So for many people, their foray, clumsily as it might be at times, into a charity to volunteer is an attempt to quench that deeper thirst, that deeper hunger, that sense of I want to do something with my life. I want to feel like I helped someone else out. So I think I take that sense of we're all guides in a minute. We're Harriet Tubmans of sorts, you know, trying to guide people on this underground railroad that is charity in America towards a better place.
Wow, thank you so much. And I think that really speaks to why people volunteer. It's because they want to have an impact. They want to feel like something that they did actually positively affected people's lives. And I think something that you've all spoken to is the idea of people from different walks of life coming together and working side by side. I know, Luke, this is something that you care passionately about finding ways to kind of get us out of our bubbles of talking only to people that look like us, that come from our similar backgrounds. Can you speak a little bit about how this comes together at Mend?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. It's something that I have always been really intensely passionate about. It is something that has come into sort of even starker relief, kind of given the political climate that we now find ourselves in.
Where people feel very divided often.
Where people feel very divided, where, you know, sort of ideological divides just seem, you know, sort of uncrossable.
Mm-hmm.
That the work, you know, fundamentally that needs to be done is very simple, and I think a lot of people, you know, can agree on the fact that people should have enough to eat. You know, people should have you know, clean clothes. People should have a roof over their head. They should have access, you know, to jobs. You know, and I think that volunteer organizations, you know, provide people a space to really go out, you know, into civil society and engage with people who are in a position, you know, of need, and not just sort of learn what they have to provide, but also, you know, sort of discover how much they need to receive. I think that, you know, a lot of people sort of get into, you know, volunteerism, you know, as you said, not with the liberation of the receiver in mind, and they bring, you know, sort of good intentions, you know, to the work. And then if they're dedicated enough and they stick it out long enough, they actually learn sort of how to make good on those good intentions. And I think that we're all, you know, sort of a mind that really is rooted in this sort of sense of solidarity. You know, we're kind of all in it, you know, together.
Right.
You know, and I think that, you know, to your question about, you know, hunger in general, it's come up. Why is this still an issue? Why are there still so many people, you know, that need food? Why are there so many people that still need all of the services, you know, that we're providing? You know, and I think really we've reached the limit of how much charity can do, how much we can provide assistance to those people over there.
Right.
And that to really move forward on any issue, whether it's, you know, hunger, homelessness, you know, housing, jobs, climate change, it requires this sort of erasing of us and them to where it's just us.
Right.
And I think that these spaces, these volunteer spaces, provide a platform for people to start creating that sense of us, kind of getting out of their bubbles and meeting people that have had, you know, drastically different lives and experiences from their own, and for the other to start to become real, to rooted in real lives and real stories and real people.
So that the other isn't the other anymore, it's us.
It's
and,
just us.
And really seeing ourselves in the other.
Yeah.
And I think food is a great vehicle for making that connection, because it is something we all share. All mothers have to feed their kids, and it's something every mom thinks about, worries about, whether it's you're worrying about the finances of it, or whether you're worried about the nutrition of it, or whether you're worried if your kids are eating enough. That's something that we can all relate to. And I think that that's so critical and important to recognize that, just what you said, we can't solve the problem when we think of the other people as others.
You know, if I can jump on that for a second, though, a very big coming trend in our business, sadly, is going to be children worrying about how their parents are eating as America ages.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every single morning, 10,000 people turn 70, and the most predictable, tragic, epic, thing that's coming right around the corner is the baby boomers. And this phenomenon of people living 10 years, 15 years longer than they have money saved up. We don't have pensions anymore. Sadly, many people have credit card debt. For example, look at Inglewood. We have two teams coming in. If you own your home, payday. If you're a renter, if you're an old renter, then you're about to end up in your car. And these are real things. So what you're going to see is now this new phenomenon of children, who might live 1 or 2 states away, wondering how on earth, how are mom and dad eating? They're just struggling to get by. So what used to always be perceived as a childhood issue, the childhood hunger, very soon you're going to have really almost a dumbbell of 2 very heavy alternate ends of a huge number of older people who will desperately be coming to food banks and pantries looking for some kind of support, because they're just, again, this is eminently predictable and kind of sad, really sad.
And I see that something that's going to have an impact on your work at Project Angel Food, because for people who need medication, for people who are, vulnerable medically, it looks like there's a lot of them coming. So I wonder how your organization is prepared to handle some of that.
Trying to go to every possible outlet to find help. We've gotten into so much more getting involved with different parts of the community, different parts of the government, different lobby groups, whatever you want to call them, to try and get some help for these people, because then we can feed the ones that aren't going to ever be able to
The
get
ones who
any.
can't get out to the
Right.
food banks and the food pantries.
We've started really focusing on the fact that food is medicine,
Mhm.
because you can take as many pills as you want. You're not going to get better if you're not getting the nutrition you need. You can't take certain pills without food, because they're going to ruin the inside of your stomach or your esophagus or whatever part of your body it's affecting. So getting them the food that's not just, you could use a few calories. It's a medication on top of your other ones. So why isn't it covered by insurance? Why doesn't someone make sure that these folks who, a lot of our clients are under poverty level or 200% under poverty level, which I've never even heard that term until recently.
Okay. It's sort of an absurd term.
It is, but it kind of emphasizes
Mm-hmm.
to the point of there's no money for rent, clothing, medication, food, your children. Which one do you decide not to do?
Right.
So at least we try to help them with one. And the one thing we started is we found out that some of our clients were eating their meals, and we couldn't figure out why. Well, they were giving them to their children, or children that lived in their household, their grandkids, whoever. And we were lucky enough to have someone that funded a program where we can give breakfast to any child 16 and under that's in that household. And I think we're up to 300 or 400 right now a day that are getting that. So at least they have something to start with.
That's
And
fantastic.
the person that needs the food can eat it and still not feel horrible about the fact that the child's not getting anything, so.
Yeah. And, Robert, when you and I spoke earlier, we talked a little bit about volunteerism in the older population as a method of maintaining energy and vitality and maintaining good health. How is that happening with LA Kitchen?
Well, I'm a big believer in intergenerational everything. So it's never an either or, it's like, how do we get both? Because we know, for example, all of us have dealt with a generation now, which, by the way, should not be overlooked, that we've raised an entire generation, 100 million millennials doing service. It's one of the great social experiments in the history of the world. I mean, to raise You know, and you gotta figure, 100% of every university freshman class, 100% has done some kind of service to get there. And you gotta figure a big hunk of them have got the bite, they wanna do something. So you have students in middle school, high school who need the hours. You've got kids in college who want more hours. And you've got an older generation, so I'm very interested in how you put them together. But economically, this is an essential. I mean, we have to keep an older generation living independently and staying productive as long as humanly possible. So frankly, you know, every single mayor in America should be having a big meeting with all the nonprofits saying, what do you need? What do you need from us to tap into this older generations? It's the deepest well of life experience in the history of the world. The baby boomers, for all their warts, the deepest well of life experience ever. So in effect, shame on us if we don't look to them instead of, as we typically do with both food and people, push it away if it isn't beautiful. This idea of how do we really take full advantage of this older generation and give them not say to them, here's our hours, here's what you'll do, stopping and saying, wait a second, if it's kind of our social responsibility and our great opportunity to be there right here, right now for this generation, should we look at our organizations and say, are there different hours? Are there different gigs? Are there different roles? You mentioned management. And of course, we're talking obviously about boards and a lot of other ways in which volunteers can be engaged, but the idea of making sure older people are fully included and engaged is a big, huge part of this new phase of my life and my own personal life to begin with.
Well, I wouldn't have gone there.
You didn't have to.
But I think that's really, really key. And I know, Luke, you talked a little bit about this as well, about how when people come together and when they volunteer, that you get volunteers to come back by giving them an opportunity to have an impact. And can you speak about how Men's model of sort of inside-out volunteerism and really putting volunteers in those pivotal roles, how that affects volunteers returning and recruiting new volunteers?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think a lot of the conversation, you know, has been around, you know, what does effective volunteerism, you know, look like? And I think that, like, we can all agree that for us, effective volunteerism looks like committed volunteers, you know, the ones that are, you know, willing to come on, you know, whatever consistent basis they're able to, and are really willing to develop a personal relationship and like invest in the particular community that the organization, you know, is serving, and really, you know, sort of embrace that. And that gets down to the why. You know, why is the volunteer, you know, there? And I think that as organizations, we've always, you know, sort of put the message out there. Well, the why is that, you know, it's your kind of civic duty. You know, why is, you know, you have
sort of some obligation. It's
some kind of obligation. You have some sort of privilege, you know, and other people, you know, need that. You know, so you have to, you know, kind of come in and give that. And you'll feel better if you do, and you'll be able to enjoy everything else in your life more. You know, kind of. You know,
so
if
assuage your guilt over
yeah,
your privilege.
Precisely, and I would love to see that kind of flip and say, you know, to folks, you need what you can gain, you know, from this experience. This is a process in immersing yourself in communities that you never otherwise would have been able to. That you gain, you know, sort of a personal power and a truth, sort of a knowing truth about the world, you know, that you live in, that nobody can take away from you. That, you know, that alters the conversations that people have about, you know, facts and information and news and echo chambers and bubbles to, these are people that I know.
Right.
These are people that I have relationships with. I know what somebody living 200% below the poverty line, you know, looks like. I know what that life looks like, which would be almost impossible to describe to someone who hasn't seen it. You know.
And let's just go for a minute into the reason why you know that, because I found this so incredible and impressive.
Yep.
When you shared that you spent 17 months, I believe, living in a tent, volunteering to help people that had been affected by Hurricane Katrina?
Yeah, I mean, that's like an extreme example. That's not the sort of thing that I would say everybody has to go out and do in order to, you know, kind of understand these things. But yeah, that was...
I'm sure it gave you a pretty profound insight into some of the challenges that people face, especially in extreme circumstances, but also the the difficulties that they were facing even before the extreme circumstance came along.
Well, I mean, that was how I learned what solidarity, looked like, because I was with a group of volunteers, and we were all living in tents, and we were living, in the same devastation, that the people that we were, feeding every day, and whose homes, we were trying to,
You weren't in the
rebuild.
warm truck giving out meals to people who were out in the cold.
No, we weren't. We were there, we showed up, we wanted to help, and we asked, people, in a sense, to teach us how to be of use to them. What we needed to know, what we needed to understand about their lives, about their communities, about what they were trying to rebuild, what they wanted. We had to sort of make, their aspirations our own. And that was a big part of it too, was like being able to sort of see the dream that, that people were trying to rebuild, and not just sort of imposing, whatever world we were trying to rebuild, for them, but really understanding that. And I think in micro, our organizations present those same opportunities to sort of like, for people to immerse themselves in other people's lives and understand their dreams and aspirations and needs and culture, and sit at a table and eat with them, because food, as you said, is this kind of unifier, and it is a form of culture that people can share back and forth, that's tangible. So I think that immersion is possible in so many different ways.
Well, you brought up something that I find really interesting, and that's about food being a bridge to culture. And I know at LA Kitchen, this is something that you've been really focusing on. Can you talk a little bit about your, I think you said it was your diversity calendar?
Yeah, well, I
And
became
what that
interested
means?
I became very interested in what we were asking people to do and how we were attracting volunteers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's an eyes wide shut moment where I was looking at not only our volunteer calendar, but I started looking at a lot of different volunteer calendars. And beyond the idea of here's a calendar, pick a date, I noticed that we all tended to focus big days on Judeo-Christian Western holidays. And it's like, wow, in LA. So I asked our volunteer person, it's like, I want to know every religious feast day. I want to know every Independence leader's birthday. I want to know every Independence Day around the world. And I want to come up with a really wildly deep calendar. So today was in anticipation of Lunar New Year. We partnered with Chinese American Association, and we had a full day in which we had chefs come in to teach both students of Class 9 and all the volunteers. We had a whole lecture on things I had no, it was really fascinating. I just learned today that you never give white flowers to men and women from China as a gift, because it's usually what you give at funerals. And it's like, oh, I didn't know that. I'm glad I know now. But it was this way, and again, we could really dig deep into a culture. And it's a big gateway. You're saying to people who oftentimes look for that way in to a charity. And again, so the thing I was really fixated, I don't know why, but the idea of a Sikh family, and that idea of where do I go? Where do I fit in? I don't do Hanukkah or 4th of July, Yeah, sure, I'm a new American, but, what about me? And so I wanted LA Kitchen, and again, we're open source about everything. So the idea is, this idea of saying, we see you, we respect you, we want you, we honor you. It's a great way to bring in many more volunteers, obviously expand the construct of community, expand the opportunity for our students to learn different cooking skills, bring more chefs in. I really love volunteer chefs too, mainly because I'm also interested in politics, and chefs have the ear of a lot of people now. And so I've seen a lot of chefs get into how can they take that natural affinity people have for food and translate it into civic action or civic engagement. And that's another big part of, I think, the volunteer opportunity, because the question becomes, a lot of people want to volunteer, but it's up to us to a certain extent to not make them feel bad for the understandable sense of redemption they want to get, but to help guide them to this next phase that they might be afraid of. I always say we're in the bravery business. It's our job to make people brave enough to see people who they stereotyped as equal,
Right.
as problems that seemed insurmountable and I can't do anything to help. Yes, you can. So I think that's really, once you get your head around the idea that our main job is to make people brave enough to take a step in a new direction, that really opens up a big, broader door to the whole concept of volunteerism.
Well, and I love that idea about community building, because in Los Angeles, we have every nationality, we have so much diversity. There are huge populations of people from different cultures who are largely, I think, ignored. both as donors, as volunteers, people who might want to get involved, but don't necessarily see themselves fitting in. So I love the idea of the diversity calendar, and I think it really speaks to that idea of getting out of our bubble and bringing people together who otherwise might not connect with each other. I know, Vesna, you talked about some of the folks who volunteer sometimes come to volunteering because they're required to, maybe because of school requirement or a court order or some other reason that forces them to find the time.
Right.
And I know you spoke to how some of those people really learned, you know, kind of what we've all been talking about, how it isn't just about what you give when you volunteer, but also what you receive. Can you speak a little bit about what you've observed?
Absolutely. I find more often than not that we also talked about why people decide not to or think they can't volunteer.
What are the barriers to volunteer?
Well, one of the things when you're forced into it that happens is all of a sudden you find all this time that somehow I managed to get those 50 hours done within a couple weeks or a month. And all of a sudden people come back and go, so I need my paperwork, or my teacher needs my report. Can I come back? It's like, well, of course you can. You're welcome to stay here as long as you want, forever, hopefully. But all of a sudden they're saying, I didn't realize if I organize my life a little bit more, I can fit more into it, and this is what I want to fit into it now.
Well, and that's also a life skill. You know, I think often when we sign up to volunteer, we think about what we're giving and we forget that we may actually be learning some really important life skills along with, you know, learning about different people. And
there's one other good thing about volunteering. There's a little bit or a lot of guilt when you cancel a shift. A little bit more than if you cancel a hair appointment or something. So people tend to not do that very often. They like to, you know, oh, I said I was gonna come in. I'm gonna be a little bit late, but I'm still gonna make it. So it really kind of brings something more to them. But one of my favorite things is when the students leave, the ones that are forced to come in, and they leave and you see the smile on their face. You're like, how was it? I really didn't want to do it, but you know, I met this person next to me and they were telling me all about these experiences they've had, because they stood next to a CEO of a huge corporation, or they stood next to a retired doctor, or whoever they might have happened to meet in the kitchen that day. And since you're all wearing hairnets and aprons and gloves, nobody has a clue what anybody else does until you talk. And they leave with these experiences of, okay, so that's cool for them to do, and I had a good time, and I'm helping someone, and it just kind of keeps building into something that they want to keep in their lives. We've had kids that started in 5th grade from the school across the street, and they're coming back now as high school kids doing their hours. We have moms bringing their kids in. They did their hours in college, and now they're bringing their kids in to do it.
It's great to
It's
see.
a really cool family thing, and it makes us one big family. It's really neat.
So getting a little bit into the nuts and bolts, because you know, I know we're going to take some questions, and I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to talk about the volunteer opportunities that exist at our organizations, what you know, what age levels are acceptable, you know, what people need. So I'm going to give you each an opportunity to make your pitch. What do you need? What are you looking for? How can folks get involved? How can they volunteer? And how can they get in contact with you? So feel free to give your website, your phone number, whatever the best means is. So Robert, we'll start with you.
Great. Again, you can come down any day. We're hoping to be, I would really aim to be 24/7, 365. I mean, literally 24/7. But for the time being, you know, Monday through Saturday, you can log on and get on online. So it's www.lakitchen.org. And it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you're going to come in. We have a nice orientation. It's usually right now we have a morning shift for those who want to be a little bit more of a regular volunteer, and again towards the older men and women who really have a lot of time. And then the afternoon shift is when we really bring in larger groups, oftentimes school groups and whatnot. So you have to be 12 years older to wield a knife, but there's plenty of other jobs for people. And again, you'll work alongside, and we're producing usually somewhere between 900 and a couple of thousand meals a day with food that would have been recovered and then sending out to nonprofit partners in the form of balanced meals. Oh, and juices too, I forgot, we started a new juice program. It's my favorite thing. No, I absolutely love this idea, because, you know, our whole bag is no waste. You know, so chop, dice, puree, juice, zest, anything you can do, we're doing, but we just started a new juice program. So that's another big part. I tell you, nothing makes kids happy than putting carrots in a juice.
Sounds like a lot of fun. All right, let's talk about volunteering at Project Angel Food.
Well, our biggest volunteer opportunity is our kitchen. We're open Sunday through Friday, 8 to 12:30. And then Monday through Friday, we also have an afternoon shift of 1:30 till about 3:30, 4 o'clock. We do ask that people come for an orientation, and the schedule's on our website, which is angelfood.org. Or you can call Volunteer Services, which is 323-845-1816, or just email volunteers@angelfood.org, and we'll work with people if they can't fit the schedule in that. 14 and over for the kitchen, 14 and 15-year-olds, we do ask an adult to be with them. It could be a brother, a sister, a parent, an adult.
And it can be one adult for a group of kids.
Yes, we have a lot of schools that'll come in, and it's a teacher with 6 to 10 students. So we try to make it as easy as possible. There are also fundraisers throughout the year, special events, some office work, and that's mostly handled, and as they come, we'll send information out to our volunteers. We send all kinds of information via email so everybody can keep in touch and decide what they want to be part of.
By the way, when I first arrived in LA, first place I volunteered was Angel Food.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We can show you the new place.
I was in the new place.
Oh, you were? Oh.
Yeah.
There's a lot of connections between us.
And actually, they host,
folks.
in effect, it's a volunteer thing, but our students do internships
Yes.
at Angel Food. So
They do.
great partnership with all of our groups. Men is hired and mentored students too, so.
True story.
It's a very small family.
Great. All right, it's your turn. Let's hear the mend pitch. What do you need?
So really, if you want to be part of the MEND community, we're looking for folks that somehow have a personal connection to it, whether it's geographic or it's, you know, a particular issue area. I'd really hate to be stealing volunteers from your part of town. You know, I think, you know, getting folks involved, you know, locally, I think is what allows it to be more, you know, sustainable. So, I mean, we really have.
Especially with LA traffic.
Especially with LA traffic. Our volunteers primarily come from, you know, the San Fernando Valley, which is a large, you know, geography, but, you know, the pitch is kind of the poverty that exists in Pacoima really is connected much more broadly, you know, throughout the San Fernando Valley, you know, even throughout, you know, Los Angeles. When I first started working there, I was taking a bus from the Westside every single day, and I was getting on the 761 bus in Westwood, taking that all the way to Pacoima. And I was amazed because I was riding the bus first thing in the morning with people that had been doing custodial work in the office buildings around you know, Westwood, and they had done a night shift and they were getting on the bus to go back to Pacoima. And at that time I was like, wow, you know, this is really, Pacoima is much more connected to the rest of the city than I ever could have imagined. So, you know, we do try to put that out there. It is a broader community than just the San Fernando Valley, but if you want to be part of MEND, you can check us out on our website, mendpoverty.org, and we really want to be able to try to say yes to anybody who wants to come in and help. So we're really very flexible in the kinds of jobs and hours and group size, what have you. You know, we try to say yes.
That's fantastic. So I'll just give a brief insight into what we do at Westside Food Bank. We encourage people to hold food drives. We encourage people to get involved with us. The biggest opportunity is food sorting in our warehouse. We have probably over 600 people every year that come and do that work. It's fantastic, fun work. We do it Friday mornings and Wednesday mornings from 10:30 to 12:30. And then you can also visit our website, WSFB, like westsidefoodbank.org, and you can make arrangements for your particular group to come and do volunteering at other times as needed. One of the things that we touched a little on, and I want to get a little bit more into, is the humility of volunteerism. I know that not always, but sometimes I encounter people who have this idea of, well, I'm giving my time, you know, you should be grateful, and I can't believe that you know, can't accommodate, you know, the time that I wanna give, or I'm, you know, I can't believe that you don't want this, you know, in the food bank world, that you can't take this food that's, you know, expired 3 years ago, and, you know, so I think if you could all speak a little bit to, you know, of course we wanna say yes, we wanna make it as easy as possible. I know in our case, because of our main volunteering opportunity is sorting food, we have to have food to sort. So there are times when we just don't have any of that food, so we have to turn volunteers away, and it's a really hard thing to do, because you want people to be engaged and you want them to walk through your door and fall in love with your organization. But sometimes, you know, the work that's available doesn't always fit what volunteers feel like their picture of volunteering is. So how do you address that in your organizations? Anyone who wants to jump in?
Well, I guess one of the things we've run into is technology taking over a lot of things that volunteers used to do, which also means a lot less work at the times when a lot of our retired folks are available, and a lot more work that they just aren't willing to or can't do. And having those conversations is really difficult, and finding ways around that. Because we do have a core group of people that we'd love to keep and busy in a way that's great for them and it's good for us, and it really takes place. So I'm not quite sure what the answer is, because it's something we've been dealing with ongoing for a while. As far as someone just kind of wanting everything to mesh with their life, most of the time, once we explain that, you know, this is why we have to do it this way, they're usually pretty good about it, or they find someplace else that better fits. And that's one thing about volunteering. The person really needs to feel a part of where they are. You want them to be happy there.
Right.
And that's partly our job, but also there's a time when you need to understand that that might not be the case.
Sure, just like any other kind of
Of course,
relationship.
yeah.
Luke, I know you spoke a little bit to this, the idea of listening, you know, that volunteerism is less about imposing your ideas, but really listening to what the needs of the people you're serving are.
Sort of a guiding quote for me ever since, you know, my time doing disaster relief, you know, was, if you have come to help me, please go home. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. And I think when you make yourself available to individuals, to a community, and you say, you know, look, my liberation is bound up with yours, and I need to be taught. And I think having that vulnerability and humility, you know, I think there's an opportunity for folks, you know, to learn. And I think as organizations, you know, if we're really stewards of that, then we're taking, you know, good intentions that people bring, and we're trying to translate that into good work. You know, we're trying to take, you know, charity and you know, sort of let people know that there is an opportunity for them to work on behalf of justice. And that really is kind of an awareness, you know, raising process. And, you know, and I think that's something that volunteers can get out of it. I think that's part of, you know, kind of a solidification of a worldview that's rooted in real people's lives that we have the opportunity to do, you know, in creating these connections, creating this, you know, kind of expansive community.
I love that idea. That really is powerful. The idea that if your liberation is tied up with mine, let's work together.
Yep.
Because I think that a lot of people feel, I know among my friend group, a sense of, it's not okay with me. It's not okay with me that we still have hungry people. It's not okay with me that people are struggling to remain housed. And yet, I don't know what to do about it.
Right.
And I think when we come at it with that idea of, you know, we're in this together. This is something that affects us all. That, you know, I'm not sleeping as well as I could be at night because I know that other people are out in the cold, not sleeping. And I think that the more that we can kind of have that sense of we're in this together, we're working together, clients, volunteers, agency staff, we're on the same mission and we're in the same boat, I think is really a powerful way to look at it. And I think that really is the model of volunteering going forward. I know you mentioned this generation of millennials who really care, and they want their, the products that they buy to support causes that they believe in. They don't want to be doing harm in their everyday activity. And I know that at LA Kitchen, one of the things that you do is try to, and I think we do this at all of our organizations, to create an environment where people can have that realization and experience that sense of connection.
Well, years ago, in DC, I developed, and we have it here, a volunteer bill of rights. It says, in effect, you have the right to work here regardless of any physical limitations. You have the right to be treated with respect. You have the right to our financial information. You have the right to know what impact your work made in the community. That's the doorway I'm most interested in. Because we have a process that I love and call the calculated epiphany. That rather than me trying to tell people what I want them to think, if you set the stage, which we all do in some way, people come to their own conclusion that's much more powerful. But it doesn't happen enough for my taste, so making it a right. It's your right to know what you did today. Ask, in a way you're saying, ask me, open the door a little bit wider, because that's what I'm more interested in. I'm not really interested in volunteers for what they help us do. I'm interested in what they leave thinking and what they leave doing. Now, one of the great frustrations that I think we all should share is that it's very difficult for us to talk to our volunteers about politics or economics. In theory, if a volunteer comes in and says to me, Robert, you're a pro, which candidate do you think I should really consider voting for, who would do the most to really relieve the issues that you have to confront with threadbare anemic charity? And if I said, wow, I'm so glad you asked, there is a tremendous candidate that I urge you to vote for. I would, in theory, the IRS could come in theory, take my 501c3 away because I engaged in partisan politics. When a for-profit corporation can do that, they can put giant signs up all over their building. So, in a way, part of our great challenge now is how do we not tell people what to think, but give them the information they need to make clear decisions, to see past the immediate need of what we do with charity, to see some of the larger opportunities we can fundamentally do away with the need for us. And I think that, for too long, I think we've pulled volunteers to help us do charity, as opposed to really challenging them gently, but purposely, to see past what we do and how this new we construct can really be translated into the way they spend their money every day. Because to your point, you're absolutely right, man, a new generation of volunteers, for them, philanthropy is how they spend their money, how they make their money, not charity. So I think the clock is ticking for traditional charity. So I think it's up to more advanced organizations to start to run towards that clock and see what we can do to really engage volunteers in something beyond just the power of what we do every day, to see the power of what we can do outside our four walls.
I know this is something that's really important to me as a person who's involved in communications and development. And one aspect of volunteerism that I don't think we've touched enough upon tonight is the idea of volunteers as ambassadors. And I think that that's not something we often think about, that one way we can be of service is by helping an organization to spread its message, to gain awareness. And I think that with the power of technology and how we're all so connected into our social media worlds, there's a lot of opportunity for people who may not have enough time or a lot of time to go and volunteer physically to spend some time getting to know an organization and then helping to be someone who spreads the word. You look like you want to say a little something about that.
Well, a lot of us come from someplace else. And a lot of us have family and friends, someplace else. So honestly, my hope would be not necessarily for somebody to come and volunteer at Mend and, go home and kind of tell, all of their friends, about it, and, oh, you should go volunteer, you should go donate, at this place. But, for somebody to come and, be able to develop a relationship with, somebody who is an immigrant, somebody who is a Muslim, somebody from, sort of a community that's been otherized, very, very dramatically, of late, and to be able to have a relationship, that they can share with other people, in their life.
Well, and I think storytelling is really powerful,
Yeah.
because as you were saying, Bill, when people have that experience,
Yeah.
and they recognize what it gave them, sharing that with people that they know is really key. And I like that idea of community-based. Go out into your community. That's something we talk about a lot at the food bank because, you know, there's not necessarily a reason for someone, you know, living across the country to connect with my food bank, but there's a food bank in their area. So I love that idea of act locally and being an ambassador, not just for an organization, which of course we all want ambassadors for our organizations, but we also want ambassadors for our causes.
Right.
And we want to find a way to create community around the cause and the idea of community building and relationship building. I think that's really key.
Yeah.
What
And if
about
our
you?
cause is humanity, and
Yes.
we have an
That's
opportunity
the
to
cause,
sort of like
humanity.
interact,
Right.
you know, with you know, portions of humanity that you know, that other people don't necessarily get to, then it feels like there's kind of an obligation to sort of share that as far and as wide as and as vividly as we possibly can. Yeah.
I mean, it's exciting now. I mean, look at, we're on Facebook right now.
Hi,
live.
Facebook.
I mean, you know, so I mean, you know, that's a powerful tool, man. Like, again, we had probably 100 different people at LA Kitchen today, and they were all literally Instagramming, boomeranging, you know, Snapchatting. I mean, so in effect, sure, yeah, it's a picture, but what's the picture of?
Mhm.
To again, you're projecting a sense of people side by side and all these other things. So there's really powerful ways in which people, beyond their immediate sense of going out and meeting another friend and talking about their day, they can transmit to hundreds of friends, you know, while they're doing it. So,
Right.
you know, and in fact, that's a big part, just to riff on something else. I think for many organizations, the idea of who controls Facebook or Instagram, normally it's one person, versus training your entire team to say, look, there's a whole group of us here, everybody can do marketing, everybody can do development, everybody can do volunteer engagement. You know, we obviously talk a lot about our team, about how do we all make sure every volunteer feels welcome. I mean, you know, again, we want to make sure every volunteer leaves saying like, wow, what a great friendly group of people, and what powerful work too.
And hopefully they're all taking pictures and posting them. We
Yeah.
worked with an organization called Daily Karma that is trying to get people to make that kind of posting connected with micro giving. So you can put $5 online and then give it out in 50-cent increments to organizations as you volunteer, and trying to kind of make it a daily habit. And I think that that's something that hopefully we'll see more and more of. And hopefully everyone watching will share this video and spread the word to their networks and their friends, because that's really important. So I want to take a moment to give a little pitch to both the Cornerstone Theater and the Westside Food Bank, and I guess MEND as well, some other organizations. This talk is connected with the final play in the Cornerstone Theater's Hunger series, and that play is called Fellowship, and it's a play for volunteers. So it's more than just a play, it's actually a volunteer opportunity, and it takes place, it's being performed at 4 different hunger relief organizations in Los Angeles, and the Westside Food Bank is one of them. Our performances will be for the next 3 Fridays. But if you would like to be part of this really incredible experience of participating in a volunteer opportunity while being an audience member for a play that results in food being provided for people in need, which, I mean, that's amazing. That's a whole mouthful. I can't even imagine that that's actually what's happening, but it is. You can visit cornerstonetheater.org to make reservations, and I believe that it is donation-based, so regardless of what you have to offer, there will be a place for you if you hurry, because I understand that the seats are selling out quickly. And I should say, not necessarily seats, because you might be standing and working, so that's something to consider. So again, that's cornerstonetheater.org, and for all my theater friends, it's theater ER, cornerstonetheater.org. So if you get confused and say, where's the website? And then you can also go to WSFB.org, that's the Westside Food Bank's website, to get more information about our work, holding a food drive, volunteering, and all of that. So that's our pitch for the play, and then also we're going to be doing a few more of these panel discussions for the next Tuesday nights. So Tuesday, January 31st, also at 7 p.m., and then Tuesday, February 7th, we'll be having more discussions about hunger. The next one will be about food policy, and then we'll be talking about food waste. So we invite you to join us for those as well. So it looks like we have a few more minutes. I don't know if we have any questions that we want to address. Otherwise, we'll just wrap up with, I guess, I'd love to hear from each of you what message you would like to offer to potential volunteers to inspire them and motivate them to get engaged, not just with our organizations, but with whatever causes touch their hearts. Bill, I'll start with you since I'm looking right at you.
Well, I mean, every minute of your life counts, man, and you can make them count even more by, again, pick your group. There's 30,000 nonprofits in the greater Los Angeles region, each one of them doing powerful work. Each one of them can offer you an opportunity to participate and be bigger than something to yourself. And I don't think you'll find anything more rewarding at a variety of levels than making your community stronger, and I'd urge you to jump in with both feet.
Thank you.
I guess I'll use a little bit of my own background. I started volunteering for selfish reasons. I wanted to meet people when I first moved to LA. When I talk to people about why they started or why they want to start or what's keeping them from starting, just don't worry about the reason. Just find a place, do something that you think you can help someone with, and you'll eventually find a place where you will feel much more is coming to you than you're giving out. And whether that feels selfish or not, it's not. You're still providing all those services. You're still helping other people. So just find that spot, or keep trying different spots, and just keep being a part of your community, because we all need that.
I guess I would share that, unless you grew up in an environment of scarcity, you don't know what a profound source of abundance community is. I think that this is one of the things that I've certainly learned, personally, working in communities of need, communities where scarcity is very real on a daily basis, is how much abundance comes from relationships, sharing and cooperation, and information and mutual support. And if you grew up in middle class American consumerist culture, these are things that you probably don't understand. And it takes going and volunteering someplace and being a part of a community like that to sort of learn those ideas and be able to absorb those lessons.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate just for a moment, because we've talked a lot about how volunteers need to listen to the organizations that they're hoping to serve and how they need to listen to the people they're hoping to serve. But I kind of want to turn that around and just say that there's also an opportunity for volunteers to bring fresh ideas and to bring new ways of doing things, much in the way that Bob, you did at LA Kitchen, going, well, why are we doing things this way? And you had to start a whole new organization in order to make that happen. So I think that it's incumbent upon us as organizations to be receptive to new ideas. I heard a story
Radically
once
receptive.
about, radically receptive, and really understanding why are we doing things the way we do them. So I heard this story about a little girl, and her mom was making a ham, and the mom cut the ham in half and seasoned it and put it in the pan and put it in the oven. And she said, well, Mom, why do you cut the ham in half? And she said, well, I don't know, my mom did it that way. And so she goes to the grandmother and says, well, why did you cut the ham in half? And she said, well, I don't know, my mom did it that way. And then come to find out that the reason why great-grandma cut the ham in half was because the oven wasn't big enough. And they just didn't have a pan the right size. So the reality was they really didn't have to keep cutting the ham in half. It was, the reason was obsolete. And I think that sometimes as organizations, we get a little stuck in our ways. So I would encourage volunteers to not be shy about bringing fresh ideas and your creativity. Some of the things that volunteers can do are often the things that organizations with their very limited staffs can't do. I'm a creative person. I'd love to be making, 2-minute videos every day talking about the great work of the Westside Food Bank, but I just don't have that much time. So if I have students that want to do those kinds of creative projects, that's golden for me. You know, there are things that people can do that maybe we haven't thought of. So I would encourage us to be receptive to that, and volunteers to be willing to bring their ideas. And I think it's a conversation, and it's a relationship, and it has to go both ways. So we all need to communicate, we all need to listen to each other, we all need to, you know, share ideas, because I think that's where the magic happens. So I want to thank everyone, those of you who came out to be with us in person. That's so very much appreciated. And those of you who are here with us on Facebook, we hope that you will share this and share the information that you learned about these great organizations, and also hopefully come away a little bit inspired about volunteering. And most importantly, we hope you will come to see the play, Cornerstone Theater, ER, theater.org, to make your reservations for fellowship. And I'm going to see it on Friday, and I'm very excited. So thank you all.